Fame can bring many privileges, but it doesn't always protect against the world's injustices. Shaquille O'Neal, one of the greatest basketball icons, was used to being recognized everywhere he went, fans asking for photos, handshakes, smiles. But on that day in a luxurious shopping mall in Miami, he wasn't treated like a star. He was treated like someone who didn't belong there. What was supposed to be a peaceful day took an unexpected turn when a well-dressed man, for no apparent reason, decided to launch a cowardly attack. In public, in front of dozens of people, he made a racist comment that cut through the air like a knife. The silence that followed was heavy. Everyone waited to see how Shaq would react. Would he lose his patience? Would the situation spiral out of control? But what no one knew was that Shaq was about to give an unforgettable lesson. With just a few words and an unexpected gesture, he completely dismantled his aggressor. The scene was so powerful that within minutes, the entire shopping mall had stopped to watch. And when the truth came to light, the outcome was even more surprising. If you think you've seen it all, wait until you hear this story, because sometimes the greatest responses don't come from brute force, but from intelligence and true greatness. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss incredible stories like this one. Shaquille O'Neal was strolling through the luxurious halls of a high-end shopping mall in Miami, tall, imposing, and with his signature charisma, he never went unnoticed. It was common for fans to approach him, ask for photos, shake his hand, and he, always in good spirits, greeted everyone with a smile. That day, surrounded by friends, he was simply enjoying the moment, relaxing, laughing, and taking some time. And for himself, nothing suggested that this seemingly ordinary afternoon would turn into an unforgettable story. The atmosphere exuded sophistication. Luxury store windows sparkled under bright lights. Well-dressed shoppers moved gracefully through the corridors, and the air conditioning provided a refreshing escape from the scorching heat outside. Shaq, accustomed to this world, walked with ease, unconcerned about anything other than deciding on his next stop. He was a giant in every sense, his height, his fame, and the way he captivated those around him. But fate has a way of playing tricks when you least expect it. Then something unusual happened. Amid the cheerful conversations and the quiet clicks of cell phone cameras capturing his presence, a man in a suit emerged from the crowd. His rigid posture, his face filled with disdain, his determined steps. He didn't seem to be there just for shopping. As he got closer to Shaq, his demeanor became even more tense, and without any apparent reason, he deliberately bumped into the basketball star. The impact was nothing for Shaq, but the intention behind it was crystal clear. The former athlete turned slowly, trying to understand the reason for such an action. A strange silence hung in the air, as if something invisible had shifted the energy in the space. Shaq's friends also noticed and exchanged glances, while shoppers nearby paused their steps, sensing the rising tension. Something was about to happen, something no one there could predict. And then came the final blow. The man, in a voice filled with contempt, uttered a phrase that sliced through the air like a blade. "This place isn't for people like you." He said it loud enough for everyone around to hear. A silent shock spread through the crowd. Some widened their eyes in disbelief, while others looked away, pretending not to have heard. What would happen next? How would Shaquille O'Neal respond to such an absurd and offensive provocation? The silence that followed those words was overwhelming. The mall, once filled with chatter, laughter, and the muffled sound of footsteps on polished marble floors, suddenly seemed frozen in time. Everyone who heard the phrase felt its impact, as if an electric current had passed through the air. Shaquille O'Neal, a man who had faced countless challenges both on and off the court, stood still for a moment, absorbing the unexpected attack. His friends exchanged glances, some visibly outraged, others waiting to see how he would react. The man in the suit who had just delivered the insult wore a smug smile, as if expecting to provoke an explosive reaction. Maybe he wanted Shaq to lose control, to yell, to retaliate in some way. But what he didn't realize was that Shaquille wasn't just a giant in physical stature. He was also a giant in character and emotional intelligence. Around them, reactions varied. Some people discreetly stepped away, trying to avoid any kind of confrontation. Others stayed, watching closely, sensing that something significant was about to unfold. A woman covered her mouth in shock. A young man holding his phone started recording quietly, anticipating that this moment would become something big. A mall security guard, standing just a few meters away, began walking toward the scene, assessing the situation. Shaq, however, didn't give in to the fury that anyone in his place would have felt. Instead, he took a deep breath, his gaze locked on the man before him. There was an intensity in his eyes, a silent message that made it clear he didn't need to raise his voice to prove his point. Meanwhile, the tension grew thicker. What would he say? How would he respond to such a cowardly attack? And then, he finally opened his mouth to speak. The entire mall seemed to hold its breath. The man in the suit, on the other hand, remained firm, still convinced that he would walk away feeling superior. But at that moment, he had no idea what was coming next. Shaquille O'Neal locked eyes with the man, his expression calm but firm. In a world where so many react impulsively to provocation, he chose absolute control. His deep, steady voice resonated through the space, carrying an authority that needed no aggression. "My brother, you're right. This place isn't for just anyone. It's for people who know how to respect others." The impact was immediate. The arrogance that had once lit up the man's face faded within seconds. He blinked a few times, as if struggling to process what he had just heard. His attempt to belittle Shaq had backfired, turning into a mirror that reflected his own smallness in the face of a true giant. Some in the crowd smirked subtly, admiring the sharp and dignified response. But Shaq wasn't finished. He reached into his pocket and calmly pulled out his wallet. With effortless grace, he took out a credit card, held it up for everyone to see, and let the light catch its golden surface. "The difference between us isn't skin color," he said slowly, making sure every word landed. "It's the size of our hearts." The reaction was instantaneous. Some people stifled laughter, while others murmured in admiration. Even the mall security guard, who had been considering stepping in, relaxed his stance and crossed his arms, clearly impressed. The man in the suit tried to force a smirk, but his face betrayed his growing discomfort. He hadn't expected to be put in his place with such elegance and intelligence. The tension in the air began to lift. What could have escalated into a full-blown confrontation had been diffused by a response so precise that it left no room for retaliation. But the situation wasn't over just yet. Once again, fate had a twist in store, one that no one saw coming. An awkward silence filled the air. The man in the suit avoided eye contact, as if searching for an invisible escape route. His once confident expression had been replaced by visible embarrassment. He had tried to humiliate Shaquille O'Neal, but in the end, it was he who had been diminished in front of everyone. The discomfort in the air was so thick it was almost tangible, as if the entire crowd could feel his shame for him. That was when the mall security guard, who had been watching everything unfold, decided to step in. He approached Shaq with a respectful posture and asked, "Mr. O'Neal, would you like this man to be removed from the premises?" The question hung in the air, and for the first time, the racist realized his actions might actually have real consequences. He glanced around, hoping for some kind of support, but all he found were disapproving looks. Shaq, however, had no interest in seeking revenge or escalating the situation. He remained composed and simply shook his head. "No need," he replied, keeping his gaze locked on the man. "He's already embarrassed himself enough." His words were like a final blow, not one of aggression, but of dignity. Shaq didn't need security, shouting, or a fight to prove his strength. He had already won in the most powerful way possible, by exposing the man's pettiness without stooping to his level. Now, visibly uncomfortable, the man in the suit clumsily adjusted his tie and turned to leave. His once confident stride had been replaced by hurried, almost stumbling steps. But just as he was disappearing from sight, something unexpected happened. A few people in the crowd began clapping. It wasn't a standing ovation, nor was it a celebration of the man's humiliation. It was a tribute to Shaq's grace, to the way he had handled the situation with intelligence and class. And just like that, in a matter of minutes, a moment of hate had been transformed into a lesson in greatness. But the real lesson was yet to come, and it would come from someone no one expected. As Shaq was still processing the moment, a mall employee approached him. He wore a simple uniform, carried a clipboard, and seemed hesitant, as if he was about to say something deeply personal. "Mr. O'Neal," he began, his voice respectful but filled with emotion, "thank you for reminding us that dignity isn't measured by the size of a bank account, but by how we treat others." Shaq, who had handled everything with calmness and composure, let a small smile form on his lips. He had heard many things throughout his life, compliments, insults, advice. But this comment, coming from an ordinary worker, caught him off guard. At that moment, he realized that his response to the racist attack had done more than just silence an aggressor. It had inspired everyone who had witnessed it. He leaned slightly toward the employee and replied in a steady, meaningful tone, "The world already has too much hate. I just want to be a better example." And with that, he sealed the moment. This wasn't just about giving a smart comeback to an insult. It was about creating a moment that would linger in the minds of those who had seen it unfold. Some people had recorded the scene, and soon the video started circulating online. But more important than its viral spread was the quiet impact it left on every person who had been there. The difference between an ordinary man and a true giant isn't in how hard they hit back, it's in how they rise above. And so, Shaquille O'Neal didn't just shut down a racist attack, he turned a moment of hate into a lasting example of dignity, respect, and true moral superiority. Faced with a cruel provocation, Shaquille O'Neal could have chosen the path of anger. He could have confronted his aggressor with force, retaliated with harsh words, or simply ignored him. But he did something much greater. With intelligence, self-control, and dignity, he turned an act of hatred into a lesson that left a lasting impact on everyone who witnessed it. What does this story teach us? That true power isn't found in impulsive reactions, but in the ability to stand tall without stooping to someone else's level. That dignity is something no one can take away unless you let them. And in the end, those who spread hate often find themselves drowning in their own bitterness. How would you have reacted in this situation? Do you believe that responding with wisdom is always the best approach? Or do you think that sometimes confrontation is the only option? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, you'll always find stories that inspire, move, and make you think.